Go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. McKee here, Lanterman here, Fatima. Yep. Barenkamp
Here.
Nichols here. Like to stand and join the pledge in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, agenda approval. Is there anything from staff?
Yes, Mayor. Item 6B is removed.
Okay.
Item 7C was updated. Item 7G was updated. Item 7H was updated. Item 7J was removed. Item 8A was removed. And item 11A was added. No other changes.
Anything from council? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, could I ask you for one thing? As we are transitioning with our city clerk, could you reiterate for the recording who made the motion and who made the second? It will help us out a lot as we're trying to do minutes
Sure
right
thing.
now.
Nichols made the motion.
Second by Barenkamp.
perfect.
Thank
That
you.
was 5-0. Okay, where were we? Commission representatives, I've got Corinne and Gary. Here, or online maybe?
Corinne is online and Gary is online.
Perfect.
Hey, guys.
And then we have open forum. If anyone would like to speak on a non-agenda item tonight, now is the opportunity to head on up to the mic. Otherwise, we'll.
Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody has anything they'd like to comment or question about, just direct it to the council. Come up to the microphone, state your issue. And we have received no cards and we received no emails.
Okay, then we will move on to item 6, which is a presentation. We have several recognitions. Blanking on the official title of the award.
Yeah, so just some citizen recognition items for some of our citizens that really stepped up in a pretty significant way in our community. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Matt Gutchuk. I'm the Director of Public Safety in Corcoran. And to kind of kick things off, our Corcoran community has always prioritized safety and care for our residents and visitors. And the evidence of these priorities are clear just about anywhere you go in our community, both in the time and money year after year from our residents, our community partners like Lions and JCs, our elected officials, and our first responders and city staff. And the paid and on-call caregivers are not the only reason we're one of our safest cities in Minnesota. We're successful in the safety and care because of the relationship and our partners within the community that share ownership that we have in keeping our home and our neighbors safe and cared for in town. The day in and day out work of our community caregivers is recognized and appreciated. But this evening, we're honored to have the opportunity to recognize a few very special people who saw the need for help in our community and stepped up without hesitation. In 2 separate incidents, we saw special people emerge from our community to care for others. They weren't on scene because they were called there or because they were seeking recognition. They were there because they saw people in our community in need of help. These acts of these brave men and women not only highlight their compassion and character, but also their embodiment of the spirit and care and safety that our city aspires to provide all our residents. So with that, I'd ask our mayor, Tom McKee, to please recognize these individuals on behalf of the city of Corcoran.
All right. You want to go name by name?
Sure. Tonight, if you'd please step up, Aaron Case, John Schick, and Megan McMahon.
Picture, yeah, picture too, family.
And Megan.
For those of you who do not know, on the morning of May 14th, 2024, a dump truck collided with a small car at the intersection of County Road 19 and County Road 30 in Corcoran. The driver of the car sustained severe injuries. Witnesses called 911 for help and our first responders started on their way. At this time, John Shute was passing through the area in an out-of-service ambulance when he came upon the crash. Megan McMahon was driving home from her night shift as a nurse when she also came upon the scene. John and Megan immediately began providing emergency medical care to the driver of the car. They were joined very shortly thereafter by off-duty St. Michael firefighter Aaron Case. Aaron began opening the mangled car door, deflating the vehicle's airbag, and assisting with patient care. They continued to help provide care until the patient was removed from the vehicle. This immediate care provided by John, Megan, and Aaron surely saved the life of the driver.
All right, let's start with that. And, our second incident would like to recognize the following individuals, so, say your name, please come forward. And forgive me if I mispronounce some names, now, Mr. Octave, Adam Lang, Doug Dobozinski, Matt Clark, Stephen Rur, and Amanda Rur. On the afternoon of May 18th, 2024, a motorcycle and car collided on Oakdale Drive in Corcoran. The driver of the motorcycle was seriously injured. Jay, is this what you might double in up here?
You're good.
Okay, my apologies.
I've got your back, man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. People seen in front of you, tonight immediately jumped into action and began providing life-saving medical care to the motorcyclists. Their assistance with patient care, CPR, and moving the patient for transport played a critical role in the life-saving efforts of our first responders. Adam, Doug, Matt, Stephen, and Amanda, on behalf of the entire city of Corcoran and the Corcoran community, please accept our sincere thank you and recognition of your brave and selfless acts in service to our community.
On up.
There we go. What's that?
There's one for me.
Oh, yeah, of course.
More. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone that was able to make it tonight, and really, again, from from the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate the work of you guys and the help in our community, so thank you.
All right. Now you have to stick around for the rest of council.
We won't do that to you. You guys rock. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The family and supporting people coming in, though, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad to be proud of
Thank you.
Mr. Doble.
Me too.
Have a
Thanks
good
for
night.
being here, buddy.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks, Matt.
You bet. Thank you. We'll see you later. Thank you. Have a good one. You bet.
That's all right.
You're allowed.
Yeah, you should.
Running.
That's so cool. I think we all should just go.
Yeah.
I think we could pretty soon.
We're gonna,
I believe Megan.
with the changes, things are good.
I just have family coming in from like out of state going for this, so.
Just gotta clip my mouth shut.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Make the council meeting go faster. Yeah, that is really
And
awesome.
they were asking if
Thank you, Matt.
delay it till they got here, right?
Oh, nice.
A couple minutes, they made it.
Did they make it?
They did, yes.
We're here. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, then we will move on to consent agenda, which consists of items 7A through 7. Is it, let's see here, I? 7A through 7I now? Does anyone want to pull anything?
Motion to approve consent agenda bottom.
Second, Nichols.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carries by a vote. Thank you very much. On to, let's see, our planning that item was removed from the agenda. On to unfinished business. We have a public comment opportunity for anyone still here and interested in speaking on items 9A or 9B. I think we're good, so we'll go into item 9A.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For those that maybe haven't been on the council for that long, a couple of years ago, developers started coming to the city and asking for early grading, agreements or opportunities. And so the template that's included in both this item and the next item were developed by council in connection with engineering staff and the city attorney. So it's attached to the reference document here. One of the conditions of that policy is that the council also approves an early grading request. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with the next two items is your formal approval for that request. Staff would then follow that template or any conditions that you would want to include. There's some additional recommendations in the staff report. So that's a little bit of context for that, why it's here and why it's in front of you. This agenda item is related to the Woodland Hills development on the northeast corner of Packard Road 116. It's been entitled, they're processing through final plat. And they're just asking to get going, usually maybe 4 to 6 weeks early is what they gain out of it. If they're a developer in our climate, that can be advantageous. The recommendation is just to include some additional language related to a comp plan amendment. And then there's also an agreement on place for this property related to a Hackamore Road project that we just want to maintain and gets carried forward. I don't think they're problematic to the developer at all, but we recommend including that language in the formal agreement. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we would recommend it to them in staff report.
Any questions for Kevin?
Yeah, I have a question. It's in the annoyance prevention department. We had, and this is not to say you're in this category, but we had those people early grade and they had the giant hills
Yeah.
on just on the other corner. Do we have cease and desist authority on their grading if things get out of control or outside of the city code? Because
If it's outside of the contract in the code, yes. So there's some hypotheticals in your question there, but there is some discretion. I would say that the situation you referred to on the other side didn't even have an early grading agreement. That was just through their grading process.
Oh, okay.
And it was
your question about the stockpiles is one element of consideration. Usually those conditions would be put into the development contract and entitlement, but a lot of times they're self-contained because you can only get a 2-to-1 max slope, and so depending on what you're doing, it's typically not a problem for smaller sites. It can be a problem for larger sites.
Okay.
So when you get into the larger sites, that is something that should be, I guess, quite a policy question for consideration. But on this side, I think they're site constrained, and I don't think you'll see stockpiles because they're moving dirt.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will stay there for a long time because it's all one phase. So when you get to its 9-phase development, the grading covers multiple phases. That's where that's more problematic than in this specific case.
I imagine it's a lot less dirt and, like you said, for a lot shorter duration.
They're motivated to not have stockpiles because they want to move forward. So that's kind of
All right, sounds good.
Fulfilling prophecy.
All right.
Any other questions?
They've already started.
So
Is
they're
that okay?
I
I mean,
so they
I
actually.
assume it's okay.
So they, I identified that there is a land disturbance grading permit in place in the property that they
Okay.
pursued ahead of the development. They went through the watershed for all that, so they met all the standards of our code.
Okay.
That would expire and be replaced by this. So that is something, there are less limitations on height and setbacks in those land disturbance things, so that would be a whole separate conversation if that was a concern of council. But yes, in this case, they are approved and through watershed for what they're doing.
Okay. That's all I have. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? I've got nothing on it, so if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to execute a final version of the early site grading work agreement contingent upon the specified conditions in the, for the future Woodland Hills development.
I'll second.
Or I'll make that motion.
Okay, I'll
Benjamin will second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Good luck. On to 9B, we have a early grading request regarding Corcoran storage 2.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Council. I'll take this one as well. Very similar request, so I won't repeat myself. The additional recommended language that staff would like to see incorporated as a condition would be, it is also described in the report that basically is making sure we're in good standing with all other permits within the city limits. And that's actually a recommendation that we would recommend you include in the overall template, just to clarify for all developers going forward.
Yeah, there's never a reason not to have.
Yeah, that's just an enhanced document recommendation, so, and so I guess if you have any questions, this is a little bit more complicated because this is actually a SIPA, a site and performance agreement instead of a development contract. So Corcoran Storage 2 is a property in the very southwestern corner of the city of Corcoran off of Highway 55. So we have a formal SIPA agreement is usually for smaller site development projects instead of a mass development. So we're recommending, because we didn't create a specific agreement for that. This is the first SIPA early grading request we've seen. And they have signed all the SIPA documents and provided the surety. They're still waiting on some additional information related to State Highway 55 and MnDOT and some buffer things they're working through with planning. So they're making this request. So they've signed everything. There's mention that we would accept that as the document, but we wouldn't release the grading until all the same conditions. So good standing with the permits, watershed approved, so we kind of carry the same methodology forward, and we would accept the SIPA in lieu of creating a new document. So we feel it meets the intent of what we're trying to accomplish. That would be the uniqueness on this specific request. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the site or what we're proposing here in staff report.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions for Kevin? I think we're good. Then I will entertain this time and not make. Motion to authorize staff to release the grading permit once the conditions of the early site grading work agreement have been met for the future Corcoran Storage 2 development as recommended in the staff report.
I'll second that.
No, you can make a motion.
I'll wait.
I'll make the motion, Barry Camp.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
That's a first. A stubborn holdout on.
Kind of first. It's funny.
All righty.
There's some glory in making the second, so
There you go.
he's all
I
about.
just didn't like being told I couldn't.
Fair enough. Okay, on to. First page up. We have nothing in new business. Item 10, we have 11A, which was added, which is 2024 core strategies, goals, and measurables. Jay, I think.
Yes, Mayor. So this is both an update to provide you information on where we're at with our core strategies, short-term goals and measurables. Request to add 2 new measurables and to remove 1 measurable. So going through there, the document in front of you, I am happy to report, I was actually very surprised, sat down with staff this week to see the progress that we've made to be at this point in the year. So if you look at what's in front of you there for that document, staff has successfully achieved at least 90% of the measurables that were established by council in January. That's pretty remarkable. There's some significant muscle movements that happen. So just to go through them quick, 1 measurable was to create a map of existing trails. That was completed on March 26th. Another one is parallel planning for City Park and then the boardwalk and Bellwether. Bellwether 10 brief on August 8th will address the plan, which we just met on Tuesday. while city park planning is continuous and ongoing, and just in tonight's agenda, there was stuff related to city park planning. So that's ongoing. Update the park standards was part of core strategy that provide diverse community amenities and recreational opportunities. The park standards were approved by city council on June 13th, 2024. And then you wanted a brief on the sources and uses and to do a joint work session. Both of those things were accomplished in our joint session on April 25th. Going towards the desire to maintain excellence and safety in our community, there was a measurable to plan and execute a brief on the potential of automated license plate readers. All per brief occurred on the 2nd of February, and then the contract was approved on April 4th. And we actually just had our first all per hit. When was that, Matt? Was that a?
Yeah, we have the systems are up and operational. We're waiting for final authorization or acknowledgement from the BCA before we go live pushing it out. But we did get the first hit and they're up and functional as of probably about a week ago.
Measurable number 2 is to review and assess fire service action planning. That's actually not supposed to happen until the end of the third quarter. That's ongoing. And then I'm asking council to add a measurable number 3 in this category for safety and security for a cannabis ordinance and to complete that by the 4th quarter. If you recall, we currently have a moratorium that's going to end at the end of the year. And so having that as a measurable will help staff prioritize that to ensure that we're postured.
It's in January, it ends in January.
January, I'm sorry.
So it's January 25.
Yeah, we just want to be done. by-
We want to be done by
Glad-
December.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was definitely, when I initially saw that was sinking end of 2025. So it's, and really end of 2020.
We're about 7 months out.
That's less.
So I'd like to add that as a measurable number 3, a cannabis ordinance.
Okay.
Going under ensure high quality market driven growth. Number 1 measurable was joint work session with the planning commission that occurred on May 21st, and we discussed zoning at that time. Number 2 was to update code to address the city's discretion to allow density of less than 3. Happy to report that the new land use designation of conservation residential with a density of 2 to 3 units per acre did not require a zoning change. So that wasn't necessary, and we were able to confirm that.
Why didn't we go 1 to 3 on that thing?
It was the calculus. So if you remember, as you change it, we were able to accommodate the 2 to 3.
Yeah, we're able to accommodate more land.
I think it was, yeah, we could do more land with the 2 to 3, and then we can
Oh,
maybe refine that number as we get closer to the
Fair enough.
2050
Yeah,
plan.
okay, fair enough.
Number 3 was to identify financial modeling firms. I actually shared with you on April 1st, the Northland memo on property tax system that provided a financial modeling understanding that Egan used that addressed some of our concerns, particularly related to fiscal disparities. And I would like to add a measurable number 4, which is to clarify business park code to ensure that it aligns with desired outcomes. Part of the reason that staff is asking for that, we received a email from property owners who have property that is guided business park. And they have some concerns and some confusion related to the code. As we've had staff conversations, we've got some confusion and concerns. And so I think it would be really helpful for us to invest some time and energy to clarify, to ensure that staff is bringing you options that align with what council would like to see align with the desired outcomes. And so would like to add that as a 4th measurable under ensure high quality market driven growth. Finally, to provide high quality innovative municipal services, that core strategy, brief on investments and use potential uses of interest was the first measurable. If you remember, 4M and PMA rep briefed council on March 28th on our current investment strategy. Number 2 is to create a subcommittee to meet and update related to future facilities needs. Staff is requesting that we move this to 2025 with current staffing priorities and emerging needs, we believe that this will have the people in place to have a better discussion about this in 2025. We'll have greater capacity and flexibility to have a better conversation.
So are we gonna RFP that, by the way?
Well, if you'd like us to.
I think we talked about it that night,
Yeah,
For what?
our municipal money management.
Oh.
the foreign part, I will come back with that, with our budget brief.
Okay.
That's fair. And then the last, measurable.
It's not my decision. I'm sort of asked, I mean. I have a lot of opinions about that, but I've expressed them.
Yeah, and I think we can have a discussion on when it comes to, back with, I think what Jay was saying. Okay, that works. Yeah.
The way I remember the conversation on the 4M fund was when we had a finance manager. We would want to engage with them and figure out, is there likely to be something better than the 4M fund? The
Well-
finance manager acting in the fiduciary capacity that the 4M fund can't. And one of those options could be an RFP.
There are other advisors that would be a fiduciary that wouldn't pick their own funds. It's the financial advisor picking proprietary funds that is the irritant.
So staff will do some further investigation. We do have a finance manager now,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
limited capacity. If you remember, we need to hire an accountant. So currently dual headed. Once we have that accountant on board, I think we'll have greater flexibility in order to provide better feedback. Lastly, is to brief, a brief of staffing as part of the budget process. We actually did a full city organizational reorganization that was briefed and approved by council on April 23rd. So that's where we are at. And again, staff would request that you add those two measurables and you remove that one measurable.
Sounds good, and I think we can do that just by motion to,
Yeah, can I add some short commentary?
yeah, absolutely.
I had a meeting or discussion at North Ambulance on Saturday. And found out that they have a new base. It's 116 and 55. And historically speaking, we
Did
didn't.
they build it?
It's a base in theory. It's a,
Okay.
well, when they refer to bases, it's, in
An
some
area.
cases, it's at a parking spot. In
Okay.
some cases, it's actual, you park the ambulance inside, well, almost
Gotcha.
inside somewhere, outside somewhere, or at a fire department.
So maybe just a little bit down from like Medina's building.
Yeah, it's like by the McDonald's.
Okay, gotcha.
So I know that at one point I was gonna do the fire thing by myself, and then maybe a couple months ago, I said I could not possibly do that by myself. So we should. I don't know if we'll get that done in the third quarter, but we might have to move that or that's a big project. I don't know how that gets accomplished. Especially when we tried to combine, in my mind, the fire and medical are,
Related.
yeah, and I don't know if they should be.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff going on there, and I don't even know where to begin.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
If I could follow that up, Mayor and Council, I also believe that this conversation about fire service and that action plan is directly correlated to our future campus planning. Like there are implications as far as the discussion, and so that probably could coincide. So when we talk about delaying that conversation and doing the subcommittee in 2025, unless Matt would protest, it might make sense to delay that to 2025 as well.
Yeah. Anything else? Any comments, questions?
Oh, do we have to approve, or I wanna actually add something, but not specifically related to this document.
So in this was actually not for a vote, this was for guidance. And then I'll bring it back based upon the guidance that we receive on those action items on the
Okay.
next council meeting.
So I think we have consensus that we're good with
Mhm.
the changes,
Okay,
which is there.
Thank
But
you.
John, did,
Yeah, I wanna talk about that there's the project that is on, we had a look at it, the United Properties project on 116 and 30.
Mhm.
And the feedback that we gave to them, there's a couple kind of lines of feedback, at least as I heard them. And even said them myself. I don't believe that what they're proposing aligns with our zoning. I continue to say it's heavy industry and it's a distribution center, which is not an office park. And his comment when he left was, well, I'll continue to work with staff and whatever. And from what I see, it's so far away from what we're looking for, and it's, in my opinion, it doesn't even fit within zone.
Mhm.
And so, staff continues to work with them on some capacity. And I just want to make it clear to the applicant that, their application, as it sits, as we've seen it, is not within zoning. And I would say the word unappetizing. And I would want to be clear about that. So we don't put a bunch of work into it, and maybe they don't put a bunch of work into it. I've seen their other projects, I've looked at it. And I just flat out don't think it belongs, and we should have that be known. Rather than see a preliminary application that we already have said we don't like. And when you talk about tweaks, like, we're not, in my opinion, it's more than tweaks. It's not the right thing for that corner, and the sooner that everybody knows that,
Yeah,
then the better.
gotcha.
And I don't think we need to rewrite code at all to make that very clear to the applicant. So I would rather go on record tonight and say that, or just to emphasize, and I don't know if you're all with me or not, but maybe it's just me, I'm one vote, but I would like to emphasize to that applicant that preliminary or whatever we looked at.
Concept plan.
The concept plan is so far out of what we're looking for that they should just stop. And it doesn't call for tweets, it calls for not the idea that they're putting together. And that would be my message to save everybody the trouble of all the work that everybody has to do and the costs involved.
Gotcha.
I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, but
I was gonna probe for a little.
Go ahead.
On
Jeremy,
that.
yeah,
So can you elaborate on the part that doesn't fit with code? Was it the truck parking area?
yeah,
How extensive that was in the back that leads you to conclude that, or is it something more than that?
yeah, I think a couple things. One, it's the definition of heavy industry is changed in the United States. And heavy industry in America looks exactly like what they're proposing to me in my mind. So that's not an office, it's heavy industrial. At least according to what they've seen, and they have cited examples of other buildings that they've been a part of, and it's just heavy industry. And so it's not coded heavy industry, it's coded office. We also don't allow distribution centers in there. And if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If it looks exactly like the aerial photo of a distribution center, it's a distribution center. And so when you have tons and tons of spaces for trucks, which they did on their concept plan, and it's giant buildings that look exactly like a distribution center, look nothing like an office complex. So there's that, and then it's also like surrounded by residential. And we have road capacity, no matter what they do at 30, that is not a place where you put what they're putting. So I would rather
pop that balloon before it gets too big.
Gotcha. And Dean?
Staff asked us to, let's do tours, let's do stuff. I'm pretty sure staff already knows we kind of do all of those things. The thing that I would be looking for is, and I go back to something that's very nice, was done a long time ago, and it's the business park and everything down along Wedgewood, west of 494, north of 10. A lot of individual buildings, the full gamut of businesses, medical device, advertising, a number of things down there. Just if you know where I'm talking, the CVS pharmacy and such, just north of there, it was called the Wedgewood Business Park way back in the day. Was very new school, but a long time ago. Building improvements, those kind of things. Some of those buildings are fantastic brick with large glass facades and such. That stuff I would rather see there than, as John is saying, there's one. Other places like that, I think that covers it. I've got it on the map right now, and the size and space and stuff like that. There's 4, 5, 6, 7 buildings. They're different, and they truly do hide any deliveries from semis and stuff in the back, and they are splitting the highway and residential space.
That Wedgewood?
That's that whole Wedgewood complex there. So again, they're older buildings, but that group has done a good job keeping them modernized, keeping them looking right and belonging with very little demolition and such. They've done a lot down there. So staff was looking for an example. That's one example from me. The other example that I know, it's huge, the Opus complexes down in Hopkins and such, where the roads meander and stuff, but I think they're a lot more acres. And again, individual buildings, that's a business park to me. The 4 buildings that are there, I know I said it's interesting, bring the concept to the council. I think we gave fair feedback and such, but the business stuff I'd be looking for is something more like that. That's my input to it, and I agree with John. This is turning more and more into warehouse and stuff then.
So if I may, Mayor and Council, this is actually our code, which lists warehouses in 3 different spots.
Yeah.
And that would be part of the reason why we're getting proposed warehouses, which is why staff is asking to clarify business code, because we hear you loud and clear that that's not what you want. And there's also different types of warehousing, and there's ways that we can bracket that and clarify that by clearing up the code. But right now, the way that it's written, we have office warehouse, we have warehouse and indoor storage used in conjunction with offices or manufacturing facilities. And then it's under, so it's in 2 spots.
It's in 2 spots, but I'd also say a lot of those buildings that have a warehouse look, you'll also see laboratories and research facilities within those buildings, and you'll also see the manufacturing. So really, there's at least 4 places where we have what would look like a warehouse building.
A printing establishment would look like that
If
too.
they're gonna look like a warehouse.
And so staff hears you loud and clear, if that's not the desired, and we're not gonna get the desired outcome if the code is communicating to some people that these are the things that we're looking for. And that's why I'm asking for us to have as a measurable, to come back and relook the code, because we're sending a confusing message to someone if we're saying, bring these sorts of things to us.
I want to correct I want to just talk about the use of warehouse in here. It's always used in conjunction with the word office. So just because has warehouse in it, it's in the context of in conjunction with an office. So I would make the argument if the building is, I'll make this up, 10,000 square feet and 9,900 square feet are used as a warehouse, but there is an office there, then it doesn't match the code, because this is in conjunction with an office, meaning that the office, in my opinion, has to be a significant piece of what they do there.
But
So when I
if-
think of an office complex, I think of offices.
Right.
And we allow warehousing
That's part of it.
as part of an office, not a humongous warehouse with a little office in the corner.
But if we were to put percentages, I'd agree with you, but not putting percentages, if they have an office, it's an office within a warehouse.
I think the lack of percentage, I actually disagree with that statement.
Okay,
Because there's an assumption, if the office wasn't a significant piece, then we wouldn't put office in the context of warehousing in any language here. If the office doesn't matter, it wouldn't be in
Which is where.
the sentence.
I'll just add to the concept plan that is igniting this conversation. We didn't get a breakdown of what was office space versus warehousing space, so.
He talked to us about it.
No, fair enough.
And he
I'm
talked
saying
to
in
me
terms
about
of
it.
What the plan's gonna look like.
Yeah.
We get floor plans as we process a site plan. But as far as what the plan looked like, it didn't have a clean breakdown of 10% office space versus 90% warehousing, or what that would actually end up looking like, because they're not gonna necessarily know that until they have a tenant. Because each tenant's warehousing versus manufacturing space versus office space is gonna be different.
But,
And so.
but he said it in the meeting, what his expected percentage was, and he said it on a phone call with me also.
No, and that's fair. I'm just saying in terms of what the plan's gonna look like. And in
Yeah.
terms of if we don't wanna put a percentage to it, and I'm sorry, I'll go ahead and speak.
No, I'll go next.
So as far as what a percentage looks like there are business parks where a majority of that is going to be warehousing space, because warehousing takes a lot of space. The office space and the manufacturing space can be more efficient, but you need space to store the products that they're creating and as part of their business practices. And we can certainly take the time to study what an appropriate balance would be. But I think that is something that you'd be surprised how much more warehousing there is because the office space simply doesn't take up as much as the warehousing does.
I can bring in some pictures if it's helpful for council of my office and we're in Plymouth. And we have a big warehouse in the back, we're a general contractor, have a warehouse in the back, but you would, going to a meeting there, you would think it's an office, you wouldn't think it necessarily it's a warehouse. So I think it toes that line of what you guys are thinking a little bit more, so I can try to bring in some pictures and see if that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is becoming clear in discussion is that we do need to help clarify both for staff to ensure that we don't bring things that council doesn't want to see. We make sure that then we're working with developers and it doesn't make it that far. And that we're also taking, part of the catalyst for this conversation was a concerned property owner in which they're confused about what the desired outcome is for their property. And for history lesson, their property's been changed, re-guided. It was guided a different direction before, and then it was re-guided. And so they've been trying to work with developers to meet the desired outcome of the council, and they're not absolutely clear what it is. So I think it's worth some effort. It might be clear in some people's minds, but it's obviously not clear to everybody, or we wouldn't keep having to talk about it.
Dean, did you have something you wanted to add?
Again, I think we're all saying the same thing and stuff. I don't think we're excited about 3 large, strong buildings. And then, again, it was concept, it was napkin, there wasn't a lot of data, those kind of things. Everything that I'm talking about as far as Wedgewood, or even you just reminded me the places down off of Plymouth, there's a number right on 55 that are same kind of thing, many offices, but a ton of warehouse, but none of them are 45 feet tall either.
None are on a county road either.
Well, it just. The warehouse side is understandable, just not a majority of the building, and then just. Anybody can build a pole shed, Ford Noah's Arks, whatever you want to call them. They just don't look right. It's not something that's appealing on that corner to me. I understand our ordinances, it probably hasn't been visited for a long time and we haven't had interest. So whatever we can do to get that clarity, I'm all for it. I'm not saying no to warehouse. I think it can be done a different way than just 4 big rectangular boxes.
And I think that's what Jay's saying. We need to.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I'm saying, some conversation for
Yeah.
staff to make sure that we are bracketing it in a way that provides clarity to all the stakeholders.
Chairman, do you have some?
I was going to ask if, for those who are concerned about this design, would something like the Boston Scientific campus off of Weaver Lake, is that the kind of facility that we would be happy with? Or is that also too industrial looking?
I'd have to go by it again and think of it in that perspective. I've been by it plenty, it's not.
So from an aerial perspective, best I can tell, they might have a half a dozen trailer truck parking areas in a building like that. So there's a very different ratio of
Yeah.
truck parking to building area. And in that particular case, they are all well concealed from.
Yeah, and
residential.
Being there, working there and stuff at the time I've done, though, the warehouse size of that is probably 300,000 square feet on a 1,000,000 square foot campus. And then, like you said, then I'd be for something like that. I think in building 1, there was 3 semi-box stalls. In building 2, there was 6. And building 3, there was 3, and then they just added the new portion out front, which has none. Everything is delivered from the back and non-visible, obviously, to the neighborhood. But again, all of that parking is facing the interstate in the woods. You can't even see it from there, but that's a business park in my mind too.
that was a
Monstrous
specific,
building.
it was specifically built for the company too. It's not as if some
Yeah.
developer said, hey, we're gonna put a giant building and pray to God that some
Bunch
Fortune
of people
500
coming to
company.
buy it, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a helpful
You
point
haven't said
that's
anything.
brought there. And staff has been talking about this. There's another reality is that this is not where Boston Scientific is. This is on the corner of 116 and 30. What the market will actually support in terms of development may not align with the desires or the vision that we have for what we'd like to see happen there. And so,
And that market may be different. I'm just thinking out loud, but that market may be different what right now versus what it is when 610 connects, for better or worse.
So one of the things that staff was talking about is we've definitely gotten feedback from the property owner adjacent, the property we're talking about, the one adjacent to the east, in which they've actually brought feedback that it's currently guided in a way that they have not been successful in finding partners that want to help them develop that commercially.
Yeah.
Because of so what will the market support? And that's one of the things staff's been talking about. Potentially one of the things in terms of looking at not just this particular category, but potentially doing a market rate study for this corridor. Because this is the area that we had considered generating jobs. This is the area that we were hoping to generate some tax revenue from commercial industrial development. And if the property just sits there dormant because we can't find the development we like that aligns with our desired outcomes, or the property owners can't find a developer to come in and deliver on those desired outcomes, it's just going to continue the way that it is and not generate tax revenue or jobs or serve the residents, you know, as some of those potential development opportunities might do.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just real quick, and I mean, nothing to anybody. I'm not a fan of build it and they will come kind of deal, but is that where the markets are, that we got to put up a building and then put up for lease then, or?
So I think that would be a great question for me to look into, but it's not unheard of for developers to do speculative buildings. And and they're typically not gonna want to create something that they can't fill, so there's typically a market that, and a niche they're trying to fill. So even though it might be scary to think of a speculative building like that, there is a reason why they believe that putting in all this time and effort and money,
Yeah.
it's a significant investment they're putting in, that they believe there's gonna be significant payoff as well, because they know that they are creating a building that can serve multiple purposes and meet the needs of interested parties. So I know that can be a kind of a scary term. We're like, oh, that's a lot of building and we don't know who the user is, but it is not unheard of. And we could certainly get some more data on that too, if you'd like.
Just looking back in history in that whole Wedgewood area, they built a lot of those buildings on the west side of Wedgewood. And then did exactly what I said, for lease, building for lease, and they filled up crazy because probably they were so close to the interstate.
Yeah.
And then the ones across the street were more specific. Somebody came in, I'm gonna build, I'm gonna be the major tenant, and then I'm gonna rent out the rest, so.
You see development happen both
Yeah,
ways.
Yeah, I'm,
And I would say that's why that's kind of seen as a critical
Yeah.
corridor, is because we know that County Road 30, County Road 116, County Road 101, this area is going to have that access to highways that a lot of Corcoran does not have access to. So we know that there's going to be support. So in terms of having them sit empty, I think that there's always a risk that there might be some empty vacancies.
there's
but
gonna be vacancies.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's also, I think there's a lot of reason to suggest that this is going to be in a high demand area.
The speculative building process, to Natalie's point, it happened both ways, as I was in Shakopee, when I was on the Development Review Committee there. You had people come in, and Natalie's point, they're building because they want to make money. So they don't want to build something and have it sit vacant. And then there's also those where it's built for a particular specific purpose. One point that I would bring up is the last time we did a market study in terms of commercial industrial potential within the community was in 2013. We're a way different world than we were in 2013. So
Can I
that
make a point of clarification on the language in the language with respect to market based? Whenever we've talked about it as a council, because I don't know if I was part of who drafted this, but we've revised it. And whenever we used the term according to the market, it was more of a response to like when Hennepin County would come in and say, you should do this, or the Met Council would come in and say, hey, Corcoran needs to do this amount of whatever to support whatever. And historically, when the council has said market-based, it's not as if you hold your finger up into the air, into the wind and say, well, whatever the market wants, you can just do it in Corcoran. It was more or less like, we'll do it according to the market, not by what some hierarchy from St. Paul or Minneapolis tells us to do. So it was kind of like, you guys have your fantasy land of what actually,
Where we're gonna go up.
yeah, you guys should do this and this, and we'll say, no, we're not gonna do some big government thing that you want us to do out here. We'll do it. We'll have a market base, but also we as council get to determine what we allow. Hopefully, is there a chance that they could, they could redo it as housing in theory if they wanted to?
No.
Yeah,
not the way this is guided right now.
You could re-guide it though, if
You
they
could
wanted.
re-guide
Well, yeah, if you change the guiding and zoning, you could.
It's
Yeah.
it's the only business park we have in the community.
Well, if the landscape has changed so much, maybe we move, I don't know what.
But it's not a business park that they're proposing a distribution center.
No,
Basically, you can't say no if you look at the pictures and if you read the description of what it is they want to do, and if you recall the comments that were made by the applicant, you can call it a business park, but I don't think that that's what they actually intend to do.
And I think that's what,
Mr. Mayor, can I just?
if you'd like, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record. Appreciate it.
Craig Esplin, 19251 102nd Place in Corcoran. we just met with Connor and one of his associates last night in Bellwether. We had about 70 people. And the feedback was kind of what you guys are saying. Don't want a lot of traffic, don't want warehousing trucks going back and forth that would be caused by warehousing. Shared that the aesthetics was not pleasing to the council. So things on the roof, people were saying, we don't want to see all that stuff. We don't want lighting. We don't want exhaust, all that kind of stuff. People were very accepting of the fact that a business park, John, is kind of you're describing, offices, medical research, fulfillment, potentially where warehousing is part of it, but not a dominant part, all were kind of appeared to be acceptable to the residents, understanding that it wasn't going to be 100% visible from any direction. So I think that what council is saying in terms of minimizing the warehouse footprint relative to everything else is something that's going to be pretty acceptable to the residents there, knowing that the tax implications are going to be somewhere in the 1.4 to 2 million, something like that, or 1.8 to 2.4 million. People were pretty pleased that that was going to be the impact, because they all know that we need more business in the city, and the neighborhood is willing to look at that and go, okay, we know we have to have something there, but it needs to be sheltered, it needs to be low traffic, it needs to be low burden on the community. And so it was a very positive meeting, and I think that from what Connor said during the meeting and after the meeting, he's very amenable to making some significant changes. However, it is a bit of a speculative piece, because he said they will build one building at a time, fill the building up, build the next building. So that leads more to a speculative build versus we have tenants and we're just building to fill the tenants. So again, I just wanted to share that as it does have some play on what you guys are talking about. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's great.
One thing that I did want to say regarding the market in terms of staff's perspective of the market, it's clear, council's guidance has been clear, is that development pays for itself. And so if we do want a desired outcome for this particular zoned area to develop, we should probably understand what the market is. Otherwise, it's either not going to develop, or somebody might come in and do a Scooby-Doo ending on us and come in and convince us that this is what's happening. And then we find out that that's not what we actually got.
We end up with a Bitcoin mining center.
Well, I don't know what I don't know what a study would actually do, to be honest with you. It's fine, we have a study of what?
Well, I
If
think
the study comes back and says that distribution centers are in demand, are we just gonna do it?
I think we'd have the discussion on that. I don't know that we need to have the discussion on it right now, I think.
So-
we're in general agreement that we need to do some refining, some work, some clarification on business park code, as Jay was suggesting. And then what that leads to down the road with it, whether it's studies or other aspects, we'll obviously have to vote on at the time.
Well, there are a couple things. I think
Then Chairman.
I think we really need to be clear with the specific applicant that whatever they're proposing is hitting a bad note. And if he was here right now, I would say as it stands, like any form of what you'd have to be so far away from what they're proposing that it's not gonna come close to what, there's, in my opinion, there's so many things that we don't like about it, that we should be very clear with him. It's why they come in with a concept plan. And I thought was very clear, we didn't like it. And I don't know, they're still working pretty hard to get the thing done. And I just, it'd be graceful to, unless you're gonna change it so significantly, it doesn't match anything about the original concept plan, like that. It's like the message isn't being received. So I would like to be stronger in the message that that is not what we want there. I think we can do that. I would like to do that. And then the part two is how do we clarify what we do want there?
And that's, I think, what Jay was.
But I think we owe it to the applicant to say we don't want what you're putting there.
Okay.
But I'm alone there.
Well, I
It
think there's
seems
a-
like.
No, I don't think you are.
If you can read this two ways, you can see warehouse everywhere. If I may, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You can see warehouse in multiple places, but it's office / warehouse. I mean, I can turn around and talk to any developer saying warehousing and indoor storage used in conjunction with offices or manufacturing facilities. When he was talking a small footprint of office and manufacturing and then a large warehouse out back with more than just boxing up what you manufactured that day and shipping it out. It sounded like there was more than that. But in item I, office / warehouse, that means office bigger than a warehouse. If we gotta put numbers to it. Wow. I think, Mark, a long time ago, you just said we keep writing more and more into our ordinances and pages. There's more and more pages and we can simplify it by this, but I guess we gotta probably talk more and more. Just sitting here while John was talking, reading this, I'm seeing more of the stuff I've described, the opus, the Wedgwood, those kind of things. Somebody coming in and saying, I can build 4 large buildings, warehouses looking like, and just add offices in them and stuff. I'd rather have more character to those buildings. And I've repeated myself a few times, so I apologize. I mean, it starts out with banks, savings and loans. I mean, civic buildings such as, it doesn't say warehouse is the main thing to me on a parcel like this. So that's me.
If I could address one thing that did come up, and I heard from the residential meeting, and staff and I talked about this. As we are working with any applicant, this one or any future applicant, it's important to note that we can communicate, hey, maximum use of, for example, trucks. You can't have more than this volume of trucks come into a space. We can communicate those types of restrictions, minimums, maximums, those sorts of things. And so that's part of what helps us clarify 2 desired outcomes.
Yeah.
Heard loud and clear that in that meeting, there's concerns about traffic. There's concerns about different types of light pollution, with noise pollution. Those are things that also would be helpful for us to communicate to people that are considering this potential opportunity to plant something here, to understand what it is that they're signing up for.
So if I can just.
We're gonna do Jeremy for you for a while, I'm sorry. Then you, Mark, then you're.
You have to interrupt me.
So I was just gonna bring up, a lot of these uses are somewhat dated. I don't think we're likely to see any new radio or television studios get built in the next 30 years. And I think there's probably some uses that we haven't considered. And a market study might allow us to refine some of these potential categories. So I do see value in using that as a modernization tool. I also think that we might find the kind of business park that we've been discussing may not be marketable for the next 20 years because there is a glut of office. And especially for sort of an exurban fringe suburb, we might not be the kind of place where they're going to reinvest. So if we, as a city, really want to see this develop, I'm not sure that I do, but if that is a goal, we might need to be more flexible in our vision for what that's going to, and what we would allow to go into that kind of a space. Maybe it doesn't need a business park. Maybe there is something better than that. So I'm open to reconsidering. I personally didn't feel like the building layout was that unappealing. I could certainly see a restriction on the number of dock doors, or a restriction on not allowing trucks to be parked overnight. So if they're not using it as additional storage.
Sounds like somebody at the podium don't like what we're saying. Yeah, you were the last to talk.
As long as it doesn't keep falling, we're fine.
Oh, man, I jumped a mile there.
I saw it happening, so I.
You're a brave man. Failure to flinch.
It sounded like the building was collapsing.
Say your name.
But I certainly get, we talk over and over about not wanting to look like Maple Grove. And when you look at the kinds of buildings by Costco, that's what I'm envisioning for what they were talking about. And so if we were to allow it to proceed, we want some restrictions to make sure that it's not just an extension of a 50-foot office park that really looks like a distribution center, even if the businesses in them don't make use of all that facility.
Gotcha.
Just to clarify, you're saying you don't like the buildings by Costco?
They're not my favorite.
Okay,
no.
no, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh. Oh, there, yeah.
So, I agree with the perspective of Counselor Fatima. I do not support this application in its current form, and I would almost recommend to them to start over.
I do want to clarify, there's no application as of yet.
Right.
It was just a concept plan.
Oh, okay, well, the concept plan I saw, there's nothing about it that I like, nothing about it that I would support.
I think
That's clear.
it's pretty clear.
Can I make another point of clarification? I don't ever remember city council having some sort of jobs mandate. So I don't recall saying we need to do this to create jobs. Like, to me, that's not something that, like, in a city council in a small town. I don't feel like creating our unemployment rate in Corcoran is probably 0. I don't know if we have some directive from voters to go out and create
Yeah,
jobs.
I think it's only been mentioned maybe somewhere in the comp plan.
It's in our comp plan and the Northeast District standards, that was it talks about how it's an area that offers opportunities for expanded tax base, jobs and retail and service businesses. The idea
Yeah.
when we worked on this plan just a couple of years ago was that this was a job creation zone. So we got rid of, this was the first area that we got rid of self-storage and mini storage. And other uses that we had identified either as not supporting a job creation area, as well as if this is considered to be a gateway into Corcoran, we got rid of contractors operations, and we didn't want to see any more trucking, like the Nelson that had gotten approved, so we had removed that as well. So there was some aesthetics that went into removing those uses, but it was also because of the job creation. So
But I think regardless of the specifics that we get a business park code to, it's still going to be comparatively a job creating area for us compared to what we have.
I guess,
elsewhere.
I would never take that as a consideration.
Fair enough. Okay. Think we have any feedback
I
back?
think staff's got a lot of feedback,
All right.
and we will get to work on that. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. Then we'll go on to, let's see here. Mayor and council reports. I don't have anything. Anyone else have anything?
I attended the Met Council discussion on the 2050 guidance.
Don't give too many spoilers. I've got mine on the, just kidding, but I've got mine.
Their proposal is that they would increase the minimum zoning requirement from 3 units per acre to 4 units per acre, and not allow any connection to the municipal system that doesn't satisfy that requirement. So I provided some feedback in the session that I attended, and I would encourage other counselors who may attend the future session to do the same.
Did the word extortion come up in that? No, okay, I was just.
I'll leave that
curious.
to you when you attend.
Did you happen to know?
I will fit that word in.
Are you signed up for?
No,
We can get you.
Councilmember Nichols, did you happen to notice how off their numbers were as well? How their 2030 numbers were lower than our 2023 numbers actually delivered. So that, and during my session, I called them on that, and I said, there seems to be a disconnect from your projections, your projectionists, and your actual auditors. So
Details.
Yeah, so if anybody watches at home, pay attention to elections, because the elections decide who's on Met Council. Met
And
Council,
election decides who's on that council.
yes.
Actually, he's.
Well, the governor decides.
Well, that's
It's an appointment.
Yes,
But he's not up.
very specifically, they want to cram more houses in newly developed areas, including Corcoran, while the cities that developed before us had no such qualifications. So, all they're doing is just, well, they're screwing over
cities like us because they didn't plan well enough.
Yeah.
They're also saying that they have more than enough area in the MUSA to support population growth for the next 50 to 60 years. So there's no need to grow the MUSA, which makes me question why there would be a need to increase the density requirement.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's probably coming from some competing interests within Met Council and the legislature. I know there's been some bills that were brought forward that would actually prohibit cities from being able to move the MUSA. It didn't pass, but it was introduced last year for the first time. And that was more of an angle, I believe, of the author was to stop urban sprawl and the climate angle that he had.
Light rail.
Yeah, that type of stuff more. Whereas then there were some of the other bills we saw about increasing density and all that. So it's kind of the same. You know, we're seeing talk out of both sides of their mouth.
It also doesn't propose redevelopment in order to stop the urban exodus. It's just pushing everybody out of the center, out of the urban center. Out.
Paint the state blue. That's what that's about.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because I'm
Yeah, thank you.
now I'll know to listen for that part specifically at that meeting. I think it's on Tuesday. It's on Tuesday, the next one.
Yeah, I've talked about that a lot, and I'm a voice like in the wilderness there. They need to hear from other people.
They need to hear from a lot of people for them to register. No one voice do they care about. It's gotta be a bunch of people.
So not only vertical farming in Corcoran, vertical housing.
I'd like to see vertical farming in Corcoran.
We allow it.
Maybe that can go in our business park. Let us
But-
fly it.
Yeah, I'm not shocked they're talking about the increase to 4. I'm a little disappointed, maybe naively disappointed that it's already coming up. I was hoping that would be maybe a
Yeah.
2060 plan thing. Maybe that is still, but they're just trying to, you know, desensitize people to it, but,
We may not want to expand the MUSA.
right?
Yeah, I wouldn't see a reason to in the near future.
It's crazy what they're, more and more and more and more will be fed down the pipe until MUSA. All of their stuff, non-market stuff,
Well,
it's
especially.
gonna be forced upon.
Especially if you add to, let's see, bump out the MUSA a little bit, and by the time that phase actually gets into it, you're 2 plans down the road, and then is it 6
Yeah.
units an acre?
6 units, they all have to be five-story sky rises.
Yep,
Um,
that's the problem when there's the mandates that can change.
Yeah.
Way down the road at any time,
if you're not in the MUSA,
you're
yes,
protected a bit,
yes.
for sure. Okey dokey. Appreciate that. Other than that, city council schedules in the packet there. Always subject to change, but got a good amount coming up. And then the last thing we have here is we are going into a closed session. So with that, city council is going into closed session to consider an offer for real estate under the authority of Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3. The city is permitted to close a meeting to consider offers and counteroffers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property. The city council is going into closed session to consider an offer for real estate. The following properties are the subject of the closed meeting. PID 01-119-23-12-0002. PID 01-119-23-31-0002. PID 01-119-23-32-0001. PID 01-119-23-32-0006. PID 01-119-23-42-0001. PID 01-119-23-42-0002. We're in closed session. Or actually, I'll call the meeting back to order. In the closed session, the city council discussed an offer for real estate and staff was provided direction. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, Lannerman.
Second, Fatima.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.